Oh, hey friends, how are you doing? This is my London apartment tour. Come on in. All right, so I'm going to show you around, and then at the end of the video, we're going to talk a little bit about the finances behind this place. So we're going to start with the whole Harry Potter merchandise thing that we have going on in the kitchen. I got pretty good at tying aprons when I was working in the hospital in COVID times because you had to wear an apron for all the patients. But my absolute favorite part of this kitchen is the fact that we have so much Harry Potter themed merchandise all over here. So we have the Le Creuset Dutch oven with the fancy Harry Potter lid with the scar and the hair and the glasses, which is very conveniently exactly the same size as the cast iron skillet. So it feels like we've got kind of two for the price of one. And in here as well, we also have, oh my goodness, the smaller one. And this is really cute. I make fajitas. I intend to make dals in here at some point, which is kind of cool. And also because I'm getting into cooking, I got a wok from the schoolofwok.co.uk if anyone wants to check them out. And continuing the Harry Potter theme, here we have our mug cupboard, but within the mug cupboard, we have 4 more Le Creuset Harry Potter mugs. We have this one, the 3 broomsticks. We have Ollivander's Wand Shop. We have Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. And we even have the Bank of Gringotts. So these are the cups that I have my tea/coffee in whenever I want. And speaking of tea, we actually have a kind of weird, oh God. Oh, yeah, we have this very bizarre, oh dear, very bizarre tea set from Harrods Knightsbridge, which is like super fancy and came with the place, but I really don't like the aesthetic of it because it's a bit too like, it's a bit too Dolores Umbridge, I think, for my particular liking. And so this stays up here and no one really ever uses it. But speaking of tea and coffee, we also have coffee making apparatus. So I use the Chemex if I'm trying to make freshly ground coffee. But realistically, I tend to use instant coffee, Nescafe Azera. Chatted to my friend James Hoffmann about this on the podcast, link down below. But he's going to be helping me upgrade my coffee setup at some point soon. So tea, coffee, all of the Harry Potter supplies we've got going on here. Let's talk about a little bit about the sink. So obviously this is where we come in and wash our hands because COVID and stuff. Whew, I actually feel a little bit out of breath with that whole clambering onto the countertop thing. But the washing up liquid that we use is run by Method. And apparently Method is not a World of Warcraft guild. It is in fact a kind of non-chemical, environmentally sustainable, environmentally legit washing up thingy. Moving on, we also have this wine cooler. It's like specifically a fridge where you're supposed to put wine. But what do we have in here? We have some Sprite Zero. We have some Diet Coke. We have some San Pellegrino Limonata. What else do we have? We have Heal, hashtag not sponsored. Loads more Diet Coke, cranberry juice. And this is often where we also have protein shakes, but I seem to have run out of them. I use Bear Bell's banana flavored protein shakes, which are my favorite. Would recommend if anyone is in the market for some protein shakery. That's our little wine cooler. There is a profound level of organization among some of these cupboards as well. So for example, here is where we have all of our grains. Obviously this organization has nothing at all to do with me and is entirely the doing of my housemate Lucia. But here we have like garlic and onions and like cans and oils and stuff that's like somewhat related to cooking. Whoops. Next we have the dishwasher, which is nothing fancy, but it's nice having a dishwasher. And then we have more cupboards over here. Spice cupboard that includes paper plates for when we host people and don't want to do any washing up, alongside some like one of these fancy like starry napkins. Been trying to get into a little bit of hosting people recently, so I've been practicing my cooking skills. And also inside our spoon cupboard, we have more Harry Potter merchandise. We have this set of 4 Le Creuset special like utensils that are all shaped like various different wands. You know, I just find that the more of Harry Potter vibe I can get in here, including the apron, the more likely I am to actually cook. And then finally, we have all of our cleaning supplies. Not much interesting going on there. Cleaning supplies, Tupperware, Mostly from my mum, because whenever she makes biryani, she gives me a whole box of Tupperware for it, and then I eat the biryani, and then I don't return the Tupperware, so that's how that works. Putting this back up there, this is our little storage spot. We also have two ovens for whatever that's worth. Came in handy one time when hosting a party for 20 people. And then we have the fridge. And in the fridge, we have orange juice, Diet Coke, lemonade, loads of vegan stuff, and it's a bit of a mess where probably most of the stuff is out of date and needs some clearing out. So that is what we have in the kitchen. Let's now move over to this sort of entrance hall type area. So in this entrance hall area, firstly, we have all of the camera gear that we brought into, into the flat. This is usually where we store our shoes as well. We have what I like to call the cloakroom, where when people come in, we can say, can I take your coat for you? And people think, oh my God, you're so adult, this is fantastic. We hang it up in the cloakroom, usually in a more legit way than this. And we also have a massive mess of shoes. They're mostly mine, actually. Even though I live with Lucia, she doesn't have that many shoes. I tend to be the one who has more boots and trainers and squash shoes and more boots and more boots and more boots. We also have in here the washing machine and dryer, super convenient. In my flat in Cambridge, I'd never had a dryer, and so we'd have to hang up clothing, whereas now we have a dryer, so that's absolutely sick. Anyway, that hopefully gives you a tour of this area. Let's now move on into the living room area. So this is the balcony, and this is where I usually start off my morning routine after doing the whole getting up, showering and changing shebang, because as per Andrew Huberman from the Huberman Lab podcast, if the first thing that you do in the morning is get sun rays in your eyes, that's really good for setting your circadian rhythm and all that stuff, which helps it just wakefulness and rest and all that jazz. Anyway, this is now the living room, and this is actually the site of the podcast that I do with my brother. So it's a fairly chill kind of recording area, recording setup. I usually just set up my iPhone on one of these tripods, set up the angle, and then we sit down and we'd record an episode of Not Overthinking, which is the podcast I do with my brother. Link down below if you want to check it out. Thank you very much, Tamil. You can leave now. And yeah, the whole podcast setup fits very nicely and neatly inside this little drawer here. So it's all pretty low friction. I just need to pile in the wires. This is how you minimize friction with a podcast. And we're also working on a course on how to do a podcast for less than 2 hours a week. So that'll be linked down below if you want to check out the waiting list, the mailing list for the course. Let's now move on to the bookshelf. So in the bookshelf, we have a few interesting books. We have The Life You Can Save by Peter Singer, fantastic philosopher, all about utilitarianism. We have, of course, The Thinking Person's Guide to Islam, solid book. We've got a few cookbooks. Dr. Rupi Ojla, one of my mates, had an interview with him on the Deep Dive podcast recently. The Doctor's Kitchen 321. This is broadly the bookshelf. And then, of course, we have the guitar. This is the Martin Mini. It's a guitar that Ed Sheeran apparently uses, but a much cheaper version of the guitar that Ed Sheeran uses. And so this is sort of my chill out area. And one of the nice things about separating the apartment from the studio now is that I don't have to have camera gear in my apartment, whereas in every other place I've lived, I've had to film in my living room or film in my bedroom. And there's something about that just it means you have all this camera crap lying around, and it's just not good vibes. Anyway, now we come to this sort of TV area. We don't really spend a lot of time watching TV, but the TV is there just in case. Over here, we have loads of board games. So we've got Bananagrams, fantastic little game that you can play with your friends. We've got Magic Maze, which is a new one. We've got Anomia, we've got Catan, really solid game. If anyone is not a fan of strategy games, you should definitely check out Catan. And then moving on, we have a little PlayStation 5, which is just sort of chilling on the side. And, when I had COVID over Christmas, I was playing a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn. I've not yet bought Horizon Forbidden West or Elden Ring, because I know that as soon as I start playing them, then suddenly I'm going to be wasting loads and loads of time on video gaming. But PlayStation 5 with a single controller. And we have an Amazon Echo. So if we want to play some music, we just ask Alexa to play the music, and I hope she doesn't activate. Alexa, stop. Thank you. We have this little thing which occasionally acts as a footrest, which is kind of nice. People chill here. There's actually generally room for about 10, 15 people. We've hosted parties. I think we had one party with 30 people. That was probably a little bit excessive. People had to stand up for that. So it's kind of a small space, but hopefully the wide angle lens makes it look bigger than it actually is. And now we come to the dining table. The dining table is often not really used for eating, but it's more used for working. So for example, here we have 4 dining-y type chairs, but we also have the Herman Miller Cosm, which is a chair that Herman Miller very kindly gave to us when we were shooting a video right here for the second channel. That'll be linked down below for the vlog channel. And this is usually if I'm working from home, I'll sit, adjust the cosm to be my height. This is quite nice, it's got these leaf things. And I'll have my laptop over here and I'll just be doing my work while I'm here. It's kind of cool. And it's also kind of bouncy. So it's like a nice way to do the chair stuff. Box of tissues, obviously. Plant, candles. We enjoy lighting candles at night sometime. Apparently it's good for helping you sleep as well. But that's broadly the living room. And then we just come to this area over here, which is the keyboard. The keyboard is on top of this weird ass table looking thing. This was a furnished flat, by the way. We'll talk more about that in the finances section at the end of the video. But this was a furnished flat, and so none of the furniture is ours. It just came with the place. And so it's a little bit weird in terms of design, including this very strange ornament. Not really sure what's going on there. But of course, I do like to have a little keyboard. This is the Yamaha P125. And so sometimes when I get home from work, even though I don't really call it work, 'cause it's just, you know, making silly internet videos, I can do my little practicing, play some Tangled, play some Disney, play some musical theater, play some Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift songs. So that is the living room overall. I think that broadly covers everything. Fake bonsai tree over there, kind of nice vibes. Real plant over there that needs looking after. But that's a living room. Let's now move on to the bedrooms. Alrighty, so now we have the bedroom, but let's start with the ensuite, otherwise known as a bathroom. And it's kind of nice. It's pretty nice having an ensuite. First things first, we have a laundry basket, which is where I put dirty laundry. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we have the towel rail where I have 2 towels. And I also have my scrub bottoms. Now this is what I use as pajamas. And I've actually been using these exact same pair since 2015, when I stole them from the hospital that I was on placement in when I was a 4th year medical student. So that's kind of fun. We have the bathtub. I don't think I've ever once taken an actual bath in here, but the shower is kind of nice. And we use Curlsmith shampoo, pretty good for nice curls. Sanex Men 0% body wash or something like that. We use Curlsmith Calming Postbiotic Conditioner. Didn't even know that's what it was called, but it's just a conditioner that my old housemate Sheen recommended me. Whoops. And we have a little bit of CeraVe Hydrating Cleanser, because obviously cleansing twice a day is useful. More in my skincare routine video coming up at some point soon. So if you're not a subscriber, then please do hit the subscribe button if you want to see that. CeraVe Hydrating Cleanser. That means I can do a little cleanse while I'm in the bath. Moving on, we now have the sink and the mirror. I like to have a little pink toothbrush, which is mine. I have my hand wash, obviously, because I do wash my hands after I go to the bathroom, obviously. And another big tub of CeraVe Hydrating Cleanser, because cleansing is super important. And then I have my Invisaligns, which I'm not wearing right now because I'm doing a video, but I just shove them on the sink over there. Moving on, we have this sort of storage area, cupboardy type thing that has a load of other random assortment of like stuff. Bit of fragrance collection. We have Penhaligon's Halfeti. We have Creed Silver Mountain Water. We have a Mont Blanc Explorer, I do believe. We have some deodorants. We have some like antiperspirants. We have my, this is a bit of a mess. Sun cream, dental monitoring, CeraVe, Invisalign. Shout out to Anglia Orthodontics for hooking me up with Invisalign a couple of years ago. Nearly finished with that. And this is where I spend like inordinate amounts of time on my phone in this position, bad for my posture, scrolling Twitter or Instagram, or replying to comments on YouTube. So if you leave a comment somewhere on this video, I might even reply to it when I'm on the toilet. This is the bathroom. It's a pretty good place to hang out. Moving on, we are now in this sort of cupboard area. The cool thing about this place, this bedroom, is that it does have a lot of storage. So for example, here we have like loads and loads of like shirts and hoodies and more hoodies and more hoodies and more hoodies, jeans and trousers. This is where all my t-shirts lie. Huge collection of t-shirts, mostly actually from Cuts clothing. Shout out to Cuts. And then I have sort of gym stuff. So I have a combination of Nike and Gymshark supplies. And also, interestingly, this Pakistan cricket top that has my name written on it, which a fan specifically got made for me when he came to Dubai for the NAS summit that I was in a few weeks ago. And he said, "Oh my God, Ali, I love your videos. I had a custom cricket top made for you. Here you go." Haven't worn it yet, but thank you very much to whoever that was. Sadly, I don't remember what that person's name was. So apologies on that front. And oh, this is kind of fun. I have another Harry Potter Le Creuset set of mugs, which I'm gonna give as a present to some of my cousins who recently had a baby. So that's cool. That, and then we have another huge kind of storage area where we've got suitcase number 1, suitcase number 2. These are suitcases from Away. This is the Away Large and the Away Carry-On. And then we have my ski bag, which has all my ski supplies in it, some jackets, nothing particularly interesting there. And then we have more cupboard space. This is generally where we store all of the spare bedding and duvets and pillows and stuff. So if we have friends staying over, they have something to sleep on. And here is just kind of underwear and socks and all that fun stuff. Now we get to where the real magic happens, and that is the bedroom. And of course, by magic, what I mean by that is consolidation of memory, because consolidation of memory happens while we are asleep. We have a nice double bed. I think it's a double bed. I'm not sure what like beds are officially called, but the bedside table there, bedside table over there, my collection of slippers over here. And then we have a desk setup, which is pretty cramped. One of the annoying things about living in an apartment in London is that they're quite small. And so we don't have a huge amount of room, although the wide angle lens hopefully makes it look a lot bigger than it actually is. This is the Herman Miller Aeron chair, which again, they gave to us for free when we did a little shoot with them, because I'm now a Herman Miller ambassador, which is very fun. And I think this is a Hay desk, H-A-Y, which, yes it is, which is one of the brands that's owned by Herman Miller. So that's kind of cool. And so occasionally, if I squeeze myself into this desk setup, this is my old laptop, but I liked having that on the stand over here. Generally, I use it as like a journaling or writing device. So for example, if the living room is busy, or if in the morning I feel like it, or if in the nighttime I feel like I can't sleep, I will just open up the laptop and I'll do some like journaling. I don't know why this keyboard's not connected, but yeah, do some journaling, and it's kind of nice. It's good for the posture, having a laptop stand, something like this. We've got How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino, which is a book that I bought from the Shakespeare bookstore in Paris a few weeks ago, or rather a couple months ago while I was there. We have this thing, which is kind of cool. This is the Belkin wireless charger. So I can use this to charge my Apple Watch at nighttime, and I also use it to charge my phone, which I currently don't have with me. And even better, I also use it to charge my AirPods. And so the cool thing about this is that when I charge my phone, it charges wirelessly, but it also means that the phone charges away from my bed. And that means that when the alarm goes ding, 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 at 7 o'clock in the morning, I have to physically get out of bed to switch the alarm off, provided I don't use Siri to switch it off, which I do very occasionally. But then when I'm out of bed, then I open the curtains, and then I feel like, okay, cool, I'm awake. I might as well just go and have a shower now. So just having the phone far away from me has been enormously helpful there. Some Sharpies, a box of Sharpies. I find Sharpies really good. These days I'm working on my book, as some of you guys know. Link below to the Book Journey newsletter if you want to hear more about what's happening with book progress. But I find that writing on an A3 pad with Sharpies is a great way of making progress when it comes to sketching out the big ideas. We have some more skincare stuff. I use the Altruist Dermatologist SPF 50 face fluid, which is sort of my moisturizer and sun cream combination each morning. And I use the Dermatica retinoid, more on this in my dedicated skincare video. And then we have, Tom Ford Noir, which is another fragrance that I occasionally dabble with. We've got the key card for my car. You know, obviously Teslas have key cards. And then like loads of deodorant and stuff. Hairdryer from Heist. I'd love to upgrade to the Dyson one at some point. And we also have a physical alarm clock, which is currently not working, for whatever that's worth. And of course, the fake IKEA potted plant, the Fejka plant that I've had on my desk since like 2014, which is an absolute staple in every YouTuber's desk setup. So that is the desk setup. Oh dear. And then that's really all there is to this particular bedroom. We now have the bed, double bed, it's kind of nice. And this is where I sleep. Little thing over here. This is the Kindle Paperwhite Signature Edition, which is kind of cool because it does charge wirelessly, which means I can put it on charge over here. Whoops. During the daytime, it charges wirelessly, and then at nighttime, I turn the lights off, turn my fan on, and then I can read on the Kindle before bed. So that's usually how I get in at least 20 minutes to half an hour of actual reading in each day, just before bed. We also have here the Aura Ring version 3. This is actually, my finger has gotten a bit fat for it, so I think I have the wrong size, but yeah, dabbling with the Aura Ring as a way of monitoring all my vitals, all of my kind of sleep stats, all that stuff. We have another Amazon Echo, which is currently not plugged in because I haven't bothered setting it up. And we have this Dyson Cool fan, which I've had since 2018 for the last 4 years. It's really good, definitely needs a bit of a clean, but I always get really hot at nighttime, and so having a Dyson fan, it's just been super nice. And it was like pretty expensive initially, and I couldn't imagine spending that much on a fan, but it's definitely come in handy, and it just looks way better than most other fans. That was the bedroom. That basically brings us to everything in the house. We have another bedroom as well, which is where my housemate Lucia lives, and there is another bathroom. Nothing particularly fancy over there to see. But now let's talk more about the finances, so we're going to head back into the living room. All right, so let's break down the finances of how much it costs to live in a place like this. Now, if you were to buy something like this in central London, a flat like this place would have cost £1.8 million or $2.4 million. I did not buy the place. I did not buy the place primarily because I could not afford it. I wanted to live in a nice place in central London, and a nice place in central London is like super expensive, and I don't yet have enough cash to actually be able to get a mortgage or be able to buy a fancy ass place like this. And so I decided to rent instead. Also, it's surprisingly hard to actually come by fancy 2-bedroom apartments in London because usually foreign investors tend to buy them up as soon as they are even in development. And so at the time that I realized I wanted to move to London, I kind of dabbled a bit of like, how much does it cost to move? Like if I were to buy a place, immediately realized it was outside my budget. And so I decided, you know what? I am going to rent for a year or two as a bit of an experiment to see what it's like living in central London while I'm young and relatively unencumbered with dependents. So how much does this place cost to rent? Well, me and my housemate are paying £4,100 a month in total to rent the place, which comes out to £50,000 a year, which is quite a lot. Conveniently, the place is fully furnished, so we didn't have to worry about any furniture or anything like that. It came with all the things that we needed. We just brought in like the piano and like laptops and that kind of stuff. But it also does not include bills. So bills-wise, we are paying £459 per month for bills. Now, this is obviously quite a lot of money. And in my previous flat in Cambridge, where I was living for 3 years, me and my brother, we had collectively pitched in to buy the place together. And had I been renting an equivalent 2-bedroom flat, it would have cost about £1,400. So we've gone from like 2-bedroom flat for £1,400 to 2-bedroom flat for £4,100. So that's like a 3x increase in kind of the amount I would pay for rent. That's obviously completely ridiculous. So why am I paying so much in rent? Well, I'm gonna be honest. I semi-regret getting this place. It was a bit of an experiment and I've decided that it's probably not worth it. And there were really two main factors that I was weighing up when I was thinking about what sort of place I wanted to live in and how much I wanted to pay in rent. The first one was location, and the second one was like, how nice is the apartment? How nice is the building? So location is the one that I think is worth it. So this place is bang in the middle of central London. It's like ridiculously amazing in terms of transport links. I can get anywhere I want relatively easily. And all of my friends who live in other areas of London and other areas of the country, they tend to come to me because I'm in such a central location. It's also really nice because now when friends are moving by London, they can stay over and it's just like a ridiculously convenient place to have people around. The area is super nice. There's loads of coffee shops, restaurants, etc. And it's just so easy to get absolutely everywhere in London from where I'm living here. So that was the main thing. Now, if location was the only thing I cared about, then probably for about half the price, probably for around about £2,000 a month, we could have gotten a 2-bedroom, relatively okay apartment in central London as well. And so the extra £2,000 a month, the extra cost for this particular place is mostly because of the niceness of the building and the niceness of the amenities. And in terms of amenities, there's a gym in the building, which is kind of nice. There is a spa in the building, which is even nicer. There's a sauna, a steam room, and a hot tub type thing. There is a co-working space within the building itself, like a little business area where you can like work. There's also an entertainment suite that has a cinema room and like a special dinner area that you can book and like a special games room that has a pool table. It's all a bit much. To be honest, I use the gym fairly regularly, but it's not an absolute requirement. I could have easily gotten a gym membership that was near my studio where I work. That would have meant that I didn't need a gym in the building. The spa is nice to have. It's a bit of a novelty. Novelty kind of wears off, not gonna lie. It's nice being able to have the steam room and the sauna, but I don't use it particularly often. Entertainment suite and cinema room I've never once used. And the co-working space downstairs, I mean, it's okay, but I have a studio, we've got an office where the team hang out as well. So that's just a nicer place to hang out. So I think before moving into this place, I thought that I would value the amenities a lot more than I actually do. And to be honest, when it comes to the niceness of the actual flat, like the apartment, I'm also not sure it's worth it, at least for me. Like, I think if I was the sort of person who spent a load of time in here, then I'd probably think it's worth it because it's just like, I'm spending a lot of time here. But I tend to just leave first thing in the morning and go to the studio. And then I tend to come back around 9 p.m., 10 p.m. And then I'm not even hanging out in the flat very much. I'm literally just going to bed. And so given that we're paying so much for the niceness of the building, and I don't even use the niceness of the building because I've got a studio and I'm not in the house during the day, it sort of feels a bit like, what's the point of paying so much? And I think when I think about getting a place in future, unless there's funky stuff I can do, like kind of making it a YouTube studio as well at the same time, where the niceness of the building would feed into it, I probably wouldn't rate the kind of amenities and the fanciness of the flat massively highly. Because having lived here, I don't think it's a huge part of what makes this place worth it. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of buy versus rent. This is something my mum always asks about, like, why not just buy a place in London? And so firstly, the answer to that is it's really freaking expensive to buy a place in central London. Generally, when you're thinking about buying, you've got to think about like the buy versus rent ratio. Now, in a place like central London, or in places like Manhattan, New York, or kind of these big popular cities, it costs a lot more proportionally to buy a place than it does to rent an equivalent place. So for example, this place would cost £1.8 million to buy, but it only costs £4,000 a month to rent. This means that in order to buy this place, let's say you're putting a 10% down payment of £180,000, you're getting a mortgage of about £1.6 million. And to get a mortgage of £1.6 million, you need to have an annual income of £400,000 per year. That's quite a lot. A lot of people, like most people, don't have that kind of annual income. I also don't have that kind of annual income because the way our business is structured, I don't take that much money out of the business. We reinvest a lot back into the business to help it grow, all that fun stuff. But if you want to rent a place for £4,000 a month or £50,000 a year, most people spend probably around about half of their salary on rent. And so with an annual income of around £100,000, you could rent a place as nice as this, even though you'd need 4 times that amount to buy it. So in this particular context, because central London is ridiculous like that, the buy-rent ratios are wildly skewed, which means if you want to buy a place with a 100K salary, you end up in a much grimier and less nice place, not in central London, compared to what you could do if you rented it. But let's run the numbers. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, I did have enough money to buy the place and I wanted to buy the place. What would that look like? So £1.8 million for the place, 10% down payment, £180,000, £1.6 million mortgage. And let's say that mortgage has an interest rate of 1.7%, which is the interest rate on my Cambridge flat. So assuming we get the same interest rate, that would mean that every single month I'd be paying £6,500 a month in mortgage repayments. So the mortgage repayments would be so much more expensive than the actual rent, like about 50% more mortgage payment than rent. When you own an apartment, at least in the UK, you also then have to pay ground rent and maintenance. And I'd estimate that for this building, the ground rent and maintenance is around about £5,000 a year, which is around about £600 a month. And so I'd be paying around £7,000 a month in terms of mortgage repayments and also in terms of ground rent and maintenance, again, compared to the £4,000 a month that we're paying instead in rent. So that's a big difference between like what it costs to rent a place and what it costs to buy a place. But then people would say, okay, but if you buy a place, then you're not throwing money down the drain in rent because you're adding equity and you're building equity and all that kind of stuff. And that is definitely true. But if we use an amortization calculator to see what the repayments for this mortgage actually look like, some amount of the mortgage repayment is principal, so how much is actually contributing to the equity of the house. But another big part of it is interest, which is literally money down the drain. It's essentially the money you're paying to the bank for the ability to get the mortgage on the house. So if we run these numbers, if I wanted to buy this place, assuming I could afford it and assuming it's available, both of which are not true. If I wanted to buy the place, I'd be paying £2,200 a month just in interest payments and another £500, £600 a month in ground rent and maintenance. So around £2,800 a month would be money down the drain, because ground rent and maintenance is money down the drain that you don't have to pay for when you're renting, and interest is literally money down the drain because it's the rent that you're paying to the bank. This means that the difference between £4,000 a month in terms of rent and £2,800 a month in terms of money down the drain, you know, let's call it about £1,500. Let's say you're saving £1,500 by buying the place. Okay, cool. At that point, we then have to think about how much it costs to buy the place. And even if we ignore all of the taxes and all of the stamp duty and all that kind of stuff, and we just think about the down payment, it would cost around £180,000 of down payment to actually buy the place. And so in essence, that's putting £180,000 away, and that's saving £1,500 a month or £18,000 a year. And so 18,000 divided by 180,000 is 10%. So essentially, by putting this £180,000 into the mortgage through a down payment, you're getting a 10% rate of return every year, which in fairness is actually pretty good. That's a pretty good rate of return that a lot of real estate investors would think is pretty reasonable. At that point, to really figure out the true cost and the difference between buying and renting, we have to figure out what would that theoretical £180,000 be doing instead. And if it were me, I'd probably put it into a low-cost index fund like the S&P 500. The S&P 500 tends to return about 7% a year on average. It's done really well over the last 5-10 years, but if we take an average over the last 30 years, around about 7%, we can say, is the average rate of return. And so the actual difference between me buying this place, again, if I could afford it, and if I wanted to, and if it was available, and the difference between me renting it is 3% of £180,000 as like an annual rate of return, which is £5,400 per year. So really the money it costs, or the money down the drain to rent this place, is around about £5,400 if you take all of these different numbers into account, making a few assumptions along the way. And at that point, it's still better to buy the place than to rent it because, well, at least you're saving this £5,400 a year. But then you think, well, why do people rent in the first place? Like, I don't think it's quite as simple as renting is money down the drain, because when you buy a place, you're kind of stuck with the place. You have to then worry about it. You have to deal with the maintenance. You have to deal with the faff. You have to deal with the ball ache and the logistics of actually buying a place, which can take several months. And in a way, I like to think of it as a difference between setting down roots and having wings. Like when you rent and you have like a 1-year contract or a few months contract or whatever, you can leave whenever you want. And so the reason why I wanted to rent in central London and I didn't want to buy is because, like, even if financially speaking, buying would have been slightly better and much better over the long term, it wasn't really a financial decision. It was a decision based on freedom and autonomy. I didn't know what it would be like to live in a place like central London. I wanted to try it out. And so renting gives me a lot more optionality. It gives me the ability to change my mind without having a real cost to changing my mind, which involves all of the costs in time and money associated with buying a place. All right, so ultimately, is living in a place like this worth it? I think it really depends. So I often think about like worth it calculations when it comes to tech. I've done reviews of iPads and iPhones and Macs and all that kind of stuff. And really, whether something is worth it is really hard to objectively define. Objectively, for me, it's probably not worth it, right? Because yeah, I would pay £2,000 a month to live in central London, might even pay £3,000 to live in central London, but £4,000, £4,100, when we're getting into those sorts of numbers, you're paying for the niceness of the place, and I don't really care about the niceness of the place because I already have a nice office that I spend most of my time in. But also I think whether or not something is worth it depends on how much disposable income you have. So for me, I don't take too much money out of the business. I instead put it all into investments or reinvest it into the business. And so if I actually had way more disposable income, like, I don't know, if I worked a banking job or something and I had a large salary and I didn't care about investments and savings and all that kind of stuff, a place like this probably would be worth it for me because it would be a smaller percentage of my annual income than this place actually is. If you're interested in how I afford a place like this as a kind of full-time YouTuber, then you might like to check out this video over here, which is a breakdown of how much money the business made last year and like the 10 different sources of income that we had. So that'll give you an idea of what those numbers look like if for whatever reason you're still interested. So thank you so much for watching. Do hit the subscribe button if you aren't already, and I'll see you hopefully in the next video. Bye-bye.